a brief story. Klein Camp is 16 years old, and we started it. The initial one was essentially many of the youths who are here today are no longer youths. We were entering the journalism job market around the Great Recession, and we got the sense that everything was kind of falling apart, and what comes next was kind of like the and speaking with Chris before this Klein Camp, we were saying, who's the audience for Klein Camp anymore? And we really went back and forth, like, well, it's not just mainstream reporters, doesn't make sense. We can't go full creator because like there needs to be like, this journalistic underpinning. Well, there's this thing called news influencers now, like makes sense. Like if I just have a Substack, like could I come? Like does that make sense? If I work on behalf of a brand, can I come to Klein Camp? And we got to thinking like, what is the like taxonomy of this space in which we all exist? So I would love to ask right now, who considers themselves a journalist? Capital J journalist. A lot of people in the room. So I'm going to float a few ideas on ways to think about this, and I want you to poke holes in it. But the reason I think this is an important conversation is this chart, which I know we've seen, right? If you ask an American, do you trust the media? Do you trust mass media? Do you trust journalists? There's lots of nuance here, which I'll get to, but this number is declining, which tells me that the way that the industry talks about itself is no longer resonating in that language with its audience, because the voracious appetite for news and new information has never been greater, both by algorithms and humans, which I'll get to. So why isn't the value being recognized by the general public? And where this is, to me, I won't give you my bio because I hate when speakers leave with bio, but this is essentially the crux of my career, that I was trained to do the journalistic process, and I did it for a newspaper once, and I did it for a publication I started once, and I've done it for brands before, and I've done it for myself. And I find commonality in all these things, but they don't use the same language. And you could describe my journey roughly. So, college Sean, the Capital J journalism light side was inmate, and I started getting a little skeptical. You know, I could see a little both. Early 30s, dark side. Journalism's dead to me. Nothing. And now I'm back where I actually see a little haggard. You know, I don't look as young. But I actually see some commonality between what used to be killing journalism or against journalism and journalists. And that's kind of what I want to suggest. Kind of 4 new rules, new way of thinking here. 1, we should never say the word journalist. 2, journalism is a spectrum. It's not binary. No one gets that. We should judge these on not the brand doing the journalism, maybe not even the people doing the journalism, but the thing they are producing is a journalism, which I think is an important distinction. And then I'm going to make the case that the AIR is actually possibly good for journalism. And I'll share some things about that. So, all right. Rule number 1, RIP, journalist the job. I would posit that it's 2025 and there's no broadly accepted definition of a journalist. Instead of focusing on the individual as a journalist, we should focus on the act of doing journalism. Back to this chart, right? Why is this the case? But when I talk to my friends who aren't in the space, I essentially get this, like, journalists hate, but I'm an original research, I'm original content, I'm original perspectives. And I'm like, yeah, this disconnect bothers me all the time, and I want to like kind of interrogate. So some other things that don't make sense about the public's interpretation of journalists, right? So journalists are intelligent, but they also see them as biased. I actually thought this was interesting. If you listen to the discourse around journalism, I think most people would say this, but that's not true. Just trying to like unpack, like how are you intelligent and well-intentioned, but also biased? That doesn't jive with, I think, the traditional understanding of journalism, but the public can hold these ideas in their head at the same time. The other thing, 60% say journalists should have to go through formal training. This is like not true. If you look at revealed preferences on what people like view and view as news, like most of the people haven't done this. And then I pulled these stats on news influencers, right? So they get news influencers who are not connected to a news organization per the news is meme session last time. Like the majority of people do not engage with these brands and these news influencers, which again is decoupling the individual from the broader umbrella of the brand in which it exists. And then 2, that the public has no idea what they're talking about when it comes to this stuff. Identify the first news influencer that comes to your mind. That's the the President of the United States. Mr. Beast. Elon Musk. Right? Like, Tucker Carlson and Ben Shapiro, I guess, but they run outlets. Like, this doesn't even like hold water. So I guess that's my point is, the public is confused. Journalism is a spectrum. And then I want to add, this is often framed in the form of the medium in which the reporting or content appears on. And I don't think this makes any sense, right? So like, writes for a newspaper or news website. Are there non-journalists that write for newspapers and news websites? Yes, right? Host a TV news show. So it's like, Sean Hannity, a journalist? Maybe. You might think so, you might not, right? Like, host a radio show. Is like the drive time WIP guys journalists? That's the sports radio thing in Philadelphia. Are they journalists? I would say no, but like, just by virtue of this description, they are. This is my point. Nothing makes sense. And I want to get to the bottom of it. So this is where I want your help. I want to take some examples of what could be journalism, could not, and I just want your help talking out whether it is or not. So, let's get an example. New York Times journalism.
Yes.
Well, that's at the brand level, right? Then opinion writer, a journalist?
No.
Why?
Yes, because most of them are. They report, they do research.
Right. So the criteria is they report.
They do research.
They do research.
They aren't pulling it out of the air.
They're just adding a little bit of analysis.
Right.
All right, so a journalist can do analysis.
But David Brooks does pull things
They
out.
do news analysis. The New York Times.
Oh, yeah, news analysis.
You don't have to convince me. I'm just exploring the space.
I love it.
Exploring the room. This is my point. All right. So like David Brooks, yes, original research and analysis, but he's like, this is what I think about it. So is it important that a journalist is unbiased? That does not is objective?
No.
Not
There's no such
No.
thing as objective.
Well, yeah, that's a whole other college class, right?
Excuse me, but he's labeled at the top as opinion.
Right, right. Does that matter?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So the transparency is more important than what they're purporting to do. Right. Okay. Interesting observation. So this is my point that a brand can do one thing, a person can do one thing. David Brooks could write a news byline piece for the New York Times technically, and that's a different classification of stuff. I think we would agree, right? So I'm trying to develop a taxonomy here, and here's my half-baked spectrum we can look at. Original reporting. I do no original reporting, I take things. I do a little bit, but then I gather from other places. I do it all myself, or right? What I'll call main character energy of the person. Am I trying to promote myself or my business or something that is important to me or into my financial interests, or am I trying to serve my audience and community? I think there's like a spectrum. So allow me a brief, trying to put people on these, right? So I am a news influencer, right? Do I do my original reporting? Let's pretend there's some that do, but it's in the idea of promoting my own platform, right? I call this the aggregation zone. I maybe do a little bit of reporting, but I'm like pulling from other people, and I'm trying to make you think I'm smart. Fine. Brand journalist. I work on behalf of a corporation. I use the data that corporation makes available to me. That is original research, but it is in my interest, right? A little bit, but I am serving the community of people who buy from my business. Maybe
Isn't that also PR?
well, I mean, that's a whole other. Comms is a whole other bucket, right? But I have take artists right here. Like, I don't care if the thing I'm saying is true. I'm just trying to give you interesting stuff. I'm trying to do some engagement.
Get me clicks.
Clicks, right?
Mm.
Right, but like, I could be this, but also be this, right? You can see how these start to like blend in. You can see my little struggle session over here. I'm trying to like figure it out. So we did the New York Times, and all right, has anyone ever heard of Hunter Brook? This is like a really fascinating thing. So they have a newsroom in which they are uncovering corruption, mostly in business, but also in sports and other things. Seems like journalism, right? Original research. However, it's backed by a hedge fund in which they take positions made available on their reporting. And they're very transparent about this. Like, we did an investigation in, there's actually one, a literal sausage factory, and they're like, this thing is a mess, it is unsanitary, this is a regulatory nightmare. We're going to report on this and simultaneously short this stuff. Is that journalism? Why? That's uncovering that new information and using the journalistic process. In the for the benefit of a community, why is that not journalism?
Just unnecessary. I mean, it's the same reason.
But they're disclosing it, right? Same with
It's
the-
transparency.
They're not lying about this.
You disclose it. It's like, say I'm a columnist at the Philadelphia Inquirer. The way I was always taught, I can use my column to write about my personal gripes, right? Because that's a misuse of my platform, right? They're misusing their platform.
This isn't a column, this is research and reporting.
But
Back
they're
to source.
misusing their position of power
They also-
to enrich themselves.
But by also benefiting society, because there's a meat factory putting out poisonous meat, I would like to know if that's a thing and how that stopped being a thing.
Separate
right?
their finances from it.
Benefit from the stories that.
Yes, so do we as the reader.
But they're transparent about it.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, they're two separate entities.
I think there's also, there's other ones that do this, Hindenburg is the other big one.
Yeah, something like that.
I think it's,
Yeah, it's a short seller thing. We're gonna get to short sellers in a moment.
It's like another business model, but at some point, a lot of the stuff that they cover is stuff that the journalism ecosystem doesn't cover at all.
Right.
They're very specifically going to under-service but large, like, business places. Another way of thinking about it would be they publish it and a third party immediately shorts it.
Right.
Because you're just gonna watch that account, you know what they're doing.
Mhm.
So like there's a connection to it, and you know the ethics of it all for me comes down to how do they make the decisions on what they cover, how influences it by the
Right.
corporate owners. But if it's not, and they're just doing the work on behalf of corporate owner who they know is interested in the outcome, like
So right by that, they would probably pick topics in which the financial outcome to them would be the most beneficial. Like,
disproportional.
yeah, right? But don't we do that with like, they can be published to our
By
audience?
doing,
Yeah, like what is the thing I could write about that the most amount of people are going to read? How is that? I mean, it is different, but like there's similarities here, right?
But that doesn't benefit the New York Times being writes about. Therefore, too many people who are losing their SNAP benefit because of government policy.
Yeah.
They're writing, it benefits the audience, but it doesn't benefit the New York Times.
Right, and like part of the trouble of journalism is the value is decoupled, the economic value is decoupled from the value to society, right? It's like kind of like one of the core things. This is like merging it together and being transparent about it. But I also agree, kind of weird. All right. So where would we put them on here, right? Like they're doing original reporting, but like they're doing it for both their own benefit and the world's benefit. It's like here,
Right on the line.
right?
Yep.
Okay, so to Hindenburg, Citron Research is a short-selling analysis where they find companies that are committing fraud or lying or overvalued or whatever they are saying publicly does not reflect their actual economic value, and they produce research reports saying you should short this company for this reason, or you should buy this company for this reason, right? So like here's an example of them like laying out like these two like funds and like why you should or should not 100% understand it. But like they're very public in saying like Palantir is so overvalued and this is why and like we are shorting it, right? This is uncovering net new information, and we are sharing it to the public, and they are taking an economic benefit. But like so could we. You guys could short sell Palantir right now if you wanted to. Is this journalism?
I mean, is this just a new version of a Bloomberg terminal that more people can access? Right?
Sort of, but it is almost like if Bloomberg then took the position they're advocating for,
Yeah.
right?
I also assume Bloomberg is taking the
I would. There's some guy in there doing that.
But don't journalists do this a lot? Like, I feel like a lot of even newsrooms do things for their own gain. I mean, how many people write
Right.
stories to get Pulitzers every year? Like,
Right, but that is like I don't know, a status benefit versus economic. And
yeah, it's still a benefit.
I think what I'm like kind of tacking to reluctantly is like the more traditional journalism mindset should not be so purist about who's benefiting from their work, as long as everyone is able to benefit. I guess it's kind of like I'm starting to get at, right? Like you can take this information and you can do what you want with it.
Well, isn't it like a sort of less ethical version of solutions-oriented journalism? Like where you're actually
Why is it
looking-
less ethical?
Well, I think it's less ethical because ostensibly, if a solutions journalism outlet is reporting on an issue and they're giving people ways to solve it or to resolve it or whatever, it's not that they're just reporting on issues that they personally
Right.
benefit.
It's benefit to society. Who cares if it benefits me, right? It's like kind of the
Right. Yeah. So but I think the transparency piece is important. But like if they might not be choosing to report on a company
Right.
is a bad actor just because they're not invested in that or
And I
whatever.
think we sometimes confuse with that for, I don't know, the journalism complex versus what's bad for society, and that it is good for society that people are reporting things that they do not benefit from, that it just helps society. Like the SNAP benefit is a great example, right? Like, that is good. This is also good in a different way, right? And like, you need both, I guess, it's a spectrum at that point. Okay.
What if they come across something that is like
Counter to their economic interest?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you find the sausage maker that like is poisoning people, but there's no way to short them, so they realize they're like, hey, we'll move on to the next one.
Exactly. Is that any different from a newsroom's corporate owners stepping in to spike stuff, which happens occasionally, right?
Right. But also like the newsrooms that did that, there was a tremendous amount of backlash, and that was not, I mean.
Maybe of the time, but are people really clued in on the ethics of journalism at the moment? Like, I would
Oh,
suggest no.
I'm thinking of the presidential endorsement that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I know people who
I'm
unsubscribed.
sorry. Yeah.
Yeah.
People have been prosecuted in mainstream media for trading on information.
Right, insider trading,
they're
right?
published.
Yeah.
And I believe that that's what this organization probably is doing,
Yeah.
or at least at the same time. They're placing that trade
Yeah.
before it would have gotten out into the general public,
Yeah.
I guess.
I'm not an SEC expert. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a journalist at all, I'm just a writer, but when I'm listening to this, I'm thinking, isn't there also like a gray area where they could be shaping the outcome on these businesses?
Mhm. Yeah.
I mean, we're presuming their research is valid,
You're right.
and they're not somehow
Right.
putting pressure on it
Right.
from a biased perspective to make money.
A capitalist would say the market would eventually realize that incorrect. All right, we're learning about memes. Is it meme account journalism? NFL meme account,
That's entertainment, I would say.
right? So I would say no and here, right? Like, yes for my audience. I do no original research. It's all screen printing, screen caps. All right, news influencers, right? Or like video essayists. We've seen these people on Instagram Reels or TikTok saying, "I'm an expert in this thing, and I am going from I'm like I have industry experience. I'm also pulling from analysis. I'm also pulling from what I'm seeing in the market, and it's both equal. I'm presenting new information that I found, but also I am applying my experience as a professional to give some sort of analysis or recommendation." This is journal.
Well, I was a hard no on those, and then I went to Adrena's session for some specific examples, because I think in my mind it was very abstract, right?
Right.
Because the pool of people who are doing this kind of
Is
thing
wide within its own right, right?
It's,
Yeah.
Yes, but
Yeah.
it's also huge, and then the spectrum of people who are doing it with some kind of ethical guidelines, some kind of ultimate benefit purpose is smaller. There is a lot of general shit talking over here that I'm concerned about, but there's a group of people who are following some of the standards.
And that's why I think you have to evaluate in this, because I think we think of buckets of people sometimes. To your point, that news influencers, a bucket first, but like each one and each thing they release needs to be judged on its own merits. And I think this is where this like starts to like be very difficult to talk about using these broad terms.
But to know whether their content is journalism, I think somewhat depends on the process, which isn't apparent. Like, is anyone other than that person in front of the camera looking at this before it becomes public? And like, so is there
Is that a
there,
criteria
like,
for
any-
journalism? Does it need to be edited?
And for me, like to do real journalism, it needs to be edited. Like if the
Oh, interesting. There's a protest on the street right now. I go down there and I live stream, and I'm like, look at what's happening right now. Am I doing journalism?
I think there's also a problem
Right?
in that definition in conflating journalism and information and what actually is going to be more helpful for people. Sometimes the capital J journalism is very lofty, and we pat ourselves on the back and say, good job us. It doesn't actually give anyone information, but this woman might be teaching me which soup kitchens to go to, how to get fed if I don't understand that.
It doesn't seem to me like the distance between this and Consumer Reports is all that great.
Right.
Well, but there's a difference between editing and fact checking. So like if this person is putting out dietary information that is like dangerous or harmful or unscientific, that's different than if they're putting out like correct information where there's.
And who's the judge of that, right?
Right.
Okay, another example. I'm really I'm a B2B guy. Gusto, which does like payroll software, kind of like ADP if you're familiar, like HR tech. 400,000 businesses use Gusto. So on the aggregate, they can see like what people are being paid, Are they hiring and firing? Are these accounts expanding or not? And they can start to produce reports based on this aggregate data. So as an example, Gusto average hourly earnings, right, per month, they're tracking it in the 30s, you know, it's like ticking up and down for various reasons we can talk about. Then they hire trained economists to write analysis based on their own data. This is journalism. It's like a game show. Should
That's like a white paper.
I would say yes.
Original data, original reporting.
Yes.
But who's checking this data? And don't they have an economic interest to reflect the data in a certain way that sells more payroll software?
But again, is it transparent?
Exactly.
Where does it appear?
They're not obfuscating what they're doing. They're like, we look at our platform, this is what we see.
But they're not representing it as journalism.
Right. Well, here they're quoted in the New York Times on the return to office story.
Yeah, I was
Right.
taking notes of that New York Times wrote a story based on.
Right. So like they think it's all right,
Yeah,
or they're
yeah,
at least,
yeah,
or they're at least
But my
communicating
question
what
about
it
the
is.
New York Times is that they do some of their own research.
Right.
No, New York Times, they didn't just, pull
Right.
from this.
This person is a source for the New York Times, and this person's source is this data. It's meant to sell more software. Is that journalism?
But pardon me, and also New York Times will have their ads that might look like an article. I'll talk about like either on digital or in paper. But if you're not like us and you have scrutiny or rigor, you'll just look at it like regular content. It's custom content.
This is not that. This was a independently.
I know
like-
that,
But you're saying there's another category.
I was piggybacking on
Okay.
somebody else. Yes, this is custom content, straight up, totally, yeah. Yeah, but the gray area here with every single example that you were mentioning is the eye of the beholder and what that person does. So, I mean,
So
not everybody is scrutiny.
this is why I increasingly think that journalism spectrum. So here's a Substack. Here's one I particularly read, but there's a thousand Substacks like this. This is one after school by Casey Lewis. She profiles like Gen Z trends, and she does her original research by talking to hundreds, if not thousands, of people in the Gen Z demo, but also aggregating, findings from elsewhere. She's like the Gen Z trends person. So she does her original research. She also leans on other stuff. She has no editor. She's just by herself. Is this journalism? Not so sure, and not so confident. All right, last example. Pablo Torre Finds Out, which is a new sports podcast for journalists or former ESPN journalist. Pablo Torre now just does investigations with himself and his team, and he publishes on his podcast. Most famously and recently, figuring out that Los Angeles Clippers avoided the salary cap by paying their star Kawhi Leonard $21 million for a no-show job as a way of attracting him to the Los Angeles Clippers. He found that out. He dug that up. He's just putting it out on a podcast, and he's showing these receipts, and he's walking through the reports, but you either trust Pablo Torre's information or you do not. Is this journalism?
Yes.
I would agree. This is actually before I want to get to like the AI aspect of this, the AI of it all. But does anyone have any other example where they're like, I am not sure? They want to bring up?
Yeah, I'd like to do a spin on the Gusto example.
Yeah.
So, for example, where I work, we produce our own research, but then it's peer reviewed, rigorously peer reviewed and published in scientific journals.
Right.
And then we write about it. If we don't get somebody else to write about it. So what's the difference, like what is the journalism, if we get.
I would say that's journalism, right?
But it doesn't matter if somebody else writes about us or if we do, or does it have the same legitimacy?
I don't know. This is my point. I don't know.
That's my point.
But I think that is a societal good, especially the topic you guys cover. Like, it is for the best that it is for everyone's benefit that occurs, right? And it's not as important, but I think it is for people's benefit that Gusto is sharing, like, this is what we're seeing, right? It's like kind of one of the lenses I started with a lot of this stuff.
I'm just gonna say we get a lot more momentum when other people write about us than we do.
Right.
And not just because of the size of the audience, but because of the authority they have.
Right, someone saying like this is it's a stamp of approval, right? Versus your own form of legitimacy. Right.
Even if it was legitimized by you.
Right. And then think about the roles that some aggregators or influencers or news creators have, where I could be a news creator, use your data, right? I'm elevating and distributing it. I'm not the gatherer, but I am the distributor. Is that journalism?
one thought.
Oh.
Maybe the we're talking
Sorry,
about, I'm
I'll
sorry,
get you.
that's traditional journalism. Maybe we should be calling it something else.
Well, this is
Because-
my point.
Because, you know, journalism, like everything else, evolves.
Yeah.
And so.
Okay, I want to get. Do I have any time? Okay. No, give me.
I just was thinking about in a previous example, some of these sources are kind of sketchy, but I feel like we live in this time where people will reshare things.
Right.
And then it finds its way into something that's like more legitimate.
Yeah.
Of a
But the
world.
laundering, the reputation laundering thing.
And we've seen so many examples of like even like political figures, the
Right.
president, taking a totally sketchy story and trying to turn it into something.
Right.
That seems like real news.
And that's like a PR tactic, right? Like
So-
ladder up these publications.
So then where's journalism and all that? It's very
Well, ideally journalism would be screened to prevent that, right? But as we know.
The other thing when we're talking about influencer journalism, the thing I'm missing a lot is the church and state separation. And I find that there's a lot of kind of obscure partnerships happening.
Yes.
Where it's like,
Yeah.
that's why I partnered with this company, and I'm gonna tell you about the story, and then suddenly things get muddled, because the same face that's, you know, trying to be an unbiased purveyor of information is suddenly taking money from a company that.
There was a Wired story that the DNC was paying money to like political news influencers, and it was like not being entirely made clear that that was the relationship they had. There was also, I remember Tim Pool was one of the people who was like layers of abstraction where like Russian and foreign money was using to pay influencers to have a certain point of view, right? And that stuff's not transparent. Like, the only reason we know about that is journalism, right? Finding it. So like, that's the hard part about the creator journalists, where you don't know their process and you don't know where they're funded, to the point of transparency kind of being one of the core things that I think defines a good journalist.
It's a pretty good segue to your AI search.
Yeah, so I want to point this out. This is a little bit of a pivot, but what I want to show is in my day job, one of the things I do is I help companies get their point of view out there via, again, like building like a publication. Not dissimilar to what Gusto did, similar kind of motion. And several of the companies I advise are in the AI space. And what I'm finding is they're reproducing journalism from first principles in a way, but they're using like AI startup-y language to do it. And I want to demonstrate the way I am hearing people talk about this and its impact. Okay. So first, let's like talk about the state of distribution online, and like this could be another hour, but right, the things that used to give us attention are not giving us attention. Right? Facebook and X referrals, boom, falling off a cliff. This is search is declined, so there are businesses where their entire business model is getting you to Google a thing, they insert themselves and you trying to answer that question, and then they capture your attention, they do something with it. So like travel and tourism was a good one, like Expedia or like Travelocity, like that, this is murdering them, because you go for cheap hotels in Lisbon, and you're now being intercepted by like an AI bot versus their search result, and their business model is fading very quickly. So one of the companies I work with is this company called Eros, and this is not an ad, but I'm saying they measure brands' position in LLM models, and they have all this data, and I stare at it all the time, and I find it fascinating. And I want to share like some of the stuff that they've shared. When people go, all right, if search isn't working, what should we do? This is the question they ask them, and this is the stuff I help position for them. And I want you to read this process here. And tell me what this looks like. You want to get topical depth. It needs to be readable by both machines and people. It needs to be new and fresh. It needs to have some sort of authority underpinning it. And then it needs to garner conversation outside of its context. Thank you. Right? So like you're like starting to like reconstruct journalism as the way these LLM models are finding stuff. So there's like a weird horseshoe thing is happening where Google and SEO, like organic traffic, if that was your strategy, you had to produce stuff that wasn't necessarily your core mission or even reporting to attract the attention to then, right, to like pull them in. And what is occurring is the LLMs are saying, we have that, we handle it. You want to know what the weather is like in whatever, Bangkok in May? We got that. You don't need to write what time is the Super Bowl, because we'll just tell you what time is the Super Bowl, right? Thank you, that was an old reference, I appreciate it. So then, the thing, if you want to be captured by these LLMs and mentioned and cited, is producing net new, fresh information. That is journalism. I find this fascinating. So like, this is like the thing they recommend their clients. New original content, refresh what you have, get on third-party websites, engage in social conversations. This is all pretty natural stuff for journalists. The other thing is what gets cited, sources driving answers on LLMs. 46%, the highest, is editorial media. Second is owned media, which is kind of like that Gusto thing I shared with you. And then reviews and other things, right? So the people who are being cited the most by the once-in-a-generation platform shift, which is occurring beneath our feet right now, is editorial media. You good? You good, Russ? And then the fresh content thing I thought was interesting. Your content is 3 times more likely to get cited if it's less than 3 months old. It's newsy to me. And then something they talk about is the difference between informational and information gain content. And I find it's like a nice thing to nicely look onto. Informational content is when you're presenting a summary of what is already known, right? So how many people here had to write something for SEO reasons? They're like, we need the keywords, this is what they're being searched, and we need to write something for that. Yeah, that's this stuff, right? People are looking for something that's already known, and you're like, maybe we can hop in that query and say, we know these things. Like, I'm a local contractor, and I'm going to write an article on the best drywall tips, and someone's going to Google best drywall tips in Philadelphia, and I'll be there, and then you'll pay me to fix your drywall, right? But like, how to do drywall is like an already known thing. Like, there's lots out there. Like, that is not a good use of time, right? If you're trying to rank in like an LLM, it's to provide net new information, it's to do original research. They love data sets. This is journalism, right? So this is what I'm kind of getting to is this AI boogeyman, of which there are many reasons to be worried about AI, and I'm not going to pretend there's not. There is this like little crack I'm seeing where it's starting to tap to the thing that we would say is the journalistic process. I find that fascinating. That's right. News sites are getting crushed by Google's new AI tool because they were playing the SEO game for 1.5 decades.
I don't agree with
Yeah, tell me.
what you just said.
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what I do.
Yeah.
I work for a national nonprofit news outlet that covers a single topic. That topic's education. About 40 to 50% of I'm our audience director.
Yeah.
About 40 to 50% of my site traffic is SEO. I'm gonna tell you, we don't play games. We only write like legitimate news stories, right? So it wasn't that we were writing like crap for SEO.
I'm not suggesting it's crap.
Right? Like we were getting traffic. So like for on search, for every 3 people that saw my link on search, 1 would click.
Yeah.
On AI, for every 80,000 people that see my link, 1 click. Right? So like
what were the things people were searching for? Just out of curiosity.
so
Keep going.
like the best ways to help kids learn math. How do we help kids in disadvantaged communities?
Yeah.
Right? Like these like altruistic, like
Right.
serious things.
Yeah.
And like we're facing this like absolutely loss, right?
The
Because of
number of
AI.
your sites seem to verify that headline.
Right. So, Google was like a card catalog
Right.
in a library.
Right.
You had to go get the book.
Right.
AI is just reading all the books, stealing from it,
So
and regurgitating.
I would say that for that information content, that is 100% happening. For
Right.
that net news stuff, I don't think it's 100%. I'm not pretending it doesn't happen.
Right.
Again, I'm not being Pollyanna here.
Right.
What I am saying is in the clients I see,
Yeah.
right, when they are cited, their traffic is plummeting for the reasons that this describes, right?
But I think it's even worse than that.
bad.
Because when I use Google search, it doesn't give me sources most of the time for the AI summary that it keeps giving me. And a very significant part of the time, the summary is just flat out wrong. And there's no source. And then eventually they fix it. So my daughter's high school graduation, they gave me the completely wrong date. I knew they were wrong. I just was trying to find out what time it was and where it was. I knew they were wrong.
Yeah.
And then Pennsylvania's minimum wage. For 3 weeks, Google told me that it was $16.50 an hour at $7.25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had AI
Well,
was
there was
giving
no
me
source, no
a
source.
recipe for a protein shake that was sugar, water, and protein powder. But all right, so I don't want to turn this into like a referendum, but I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing. And what I'm seeing is the people who come in via the AI LLMs, which is a significant less than the people who came in organic. But what I am seeing is they're more educated before they arrive on your site because they've done all their pre-research and had AI answer their questions, however accurately, before they get there. So they have a better idea of what they want. And what I'm seeing is once they arrive at the sites that I am personally responsible for, they spend more time there and they are more likely to convert. So I have one client where it's 6x the people going through SEO. And so I'm getting numbers for these other clients as well. But I think what we're starting to, this trade-off that's starting to occur is being okay with less eyeballs, but trying to optimize for the ones that come are more further down your funnel and are more willing to convert or buy or subscribe or whatever it is the action you're trying to do.
Is that different though if your product is information versus you have a product that you're writing information about to get them to buy?
So I am mostly concerned with the latter, but the former, the conversion costs $0 at first, right? Like signing up to your newsletter for everyone here would be a great win for someone who came through LLM, right? Like costs $0. So I would love if anyone has any other conversion numbers to that point. But in the businesses I'm working with, that is like the middle of the funnel and the end of the funnel of that purchase. So I'm only looking at the end.
So they're not journalism clients.
Well, this is my point. Like Augusto-like client, right?
Yeah.
Is that journalism? Is my point, right? And I'm trying to draw lessons from what I'm seeing in this like B2B world I have, and the way distribution is working in this new AI age, and trying to like unpack the ways in which the process of which we love can be applied to this new distribution model, or can it?
But one of the, I think it's brilliant because one of the problems that we're seeing in journalism is that a lot of people in the industry don't have any clue how to monetize the industry, and so 2.5 news outlets are closing across the country every week. So like, good journalism doesn't know how to monetize itself. So like, I think drawing from some of these things and figuring out, oh, if people are coming to my news source, like maybe I can get them to subscribe or become a member or whatever, like is valuable for the industry.
That's why like that hedge fund example is like, kind of like, in one way it hurts my soul, but on the other way it's like, if this is what it takes to get like net new information that benefits society out, like is this bad? Right? Is what we're working at. And what I'm seeing is like, because of the LLM answering what I would call like the more known or summarized stuff, by the time they arrive to your thing, they are more educated on the basics on whatever it is you cover. So you either have the opportunity to write that education or adjust that education, or you don't have to deal with the basics and you can get to the more deeper analysis. I am finding this to be very encouraging for the editorial teams of which I am advising.
This is interesting, this I can get on board with, the people that all right, so like, I would rather have, 500 people who are really quality readers.
Right.
Than people that are coming, clicking, seeing, this isn't what I wanted, and leaving.
And that's, like you said, one of the searches was like how to like tutor disadvantaged communities as an example, right? So like to use that example, right, there are probably some like, I don't know, I'm not a teacher, but I'm sure there's like some styles of doing that in teaching that is specific for that clientele. But then there's probably things that your organization uniquely knows about that, or has seen, or original research, or programs that are successes, that you would focus there, right, instead. You would just like move down a little bit. And I am not here to tell you it is 1 for 1 and you make $1 on search and make $1 on whoever this audience is. I don't know, it's too early. But I'm just here reporting the news, man. That's what I'm saying.
I think this triggers the monetization problem that somebody else mentioned. A lot of these newsrooms have created a monetization flywheel that uses bulk audience from search to underwrite reporting, which has less value, or conversions, which are pretty low, or especially low in the current economy. And so it does result in the need for all these businesses to reinvent their monetization, which most of them do not. It results in audiences having to transact for information that they're used to getting for free, or still get for free through aggregation on social media platforms, which is another challenge. And at the same time, the AI is going to keep eating everything, and if it doesn't have things to eat, and it doesn't have information to give.
And to your point, like, the doomer approach here is like, hey, I'm just going to catch up to that, and then catch up to the next thing, and then catch up to the next thing, and then I'm not going to know the future for that. That is my fear. That like, all right, this works now, right? But like in 2 years, like, does it somehow, I don't know, does it get the data, the raw data, before I even have a chance to write about it? I don't know. Like, I think that is a real fear. But where it stands today is this, right? Like, and I think you could have been in a newsroom for 20 years and not know of a world where SEO organic traffic was your main driver, right? It's a huge mindset shift.
I'm a creator journalist, and so we're talking about creators and content creation, all that. I think that's where creators come into play. We're like, AI is doing all these things, but it is, people recognize the creators, right? It is in terms of sometimes there's information.
I want your take, your thought, your analysis. What do you think?
Well, that part of it, but then
Yeah.
also breaking down some of this news that they're figuring out, they're trying to find as well. And so, like, this idea, Ben Collins, The Onion, and once say, AI can't make you laugh, but like, a creator.
Right, great example,
could,
right?
And a creator, AI theoretically can't go on live stream, hopefully, but like.
I've seen some things, man.
But still, like, people.
Yet.
So I think that's where we can connect to a little bit.
I have 3 minutes left, so I don't know, just to summarize, I don't think we should call people journalists anymore. I think journalism is a spectrum. I think the way we evaluate this should be in this order: the content first, then the person, and then the brand. The fact that we talk about brands as being journalistically sound, even individuals, I think leads to a lot of confusion. And then AI era. Possibly some good things happening on top of the bad thing. Just wanted to give you a lens of something to maybe like build on. And if you disagree with anything I said, please argue with me. Thank you.
This year, after 16 years of doing this Unconference, some of you have been here for many years, some of you are coming for the first time. So over 16 years, what is now called Klein News Innovation Camp. It was always about like how we were informing communities, and that always had very different vibes. Like 15 years ago, it was a bunch of like blogger data dweebs like me, and journalism-y people, and that has continued to flourish and evolve. And so we're gonna have a lunchtime conversation that's gonna be in that spirit of the mix of creators emerging, other forms of independent journalism, and other ways we inform communities. And I'm delighted to be able to have this conversation with 3 friends who are expressing that work in lots of different ways. Santiago, Yoe, and Papa, who we'll get to. I'm going to have them all introduce themselves with a mic as we go. But could we start with, Santiago, maybe I'll start with you. Could we each do like piece of editorial that you've done recently by way of introduction so everyone knows who am I staring at? So set us up.
Hello, my name is Santiago Ortiz. I'm a current Temple student. Go Owls! And my social media page is No Shorts USA, but it's really just No Shorts, which is short for No Shortcuts. Winners don't take shortcuts. It's kind of motto. And
insight. Where does the USA come from? Why USA?
So we live in America. Just at No Shorts wasn't available. So I was like, you know what? USA.
See, there you go. Now we get down to it.
I don't like shorts.
But I'll say like 3 quick videos that I've done recently that kind of explain what I do, because everything I do is anything like Philadelphia or Pennsylvania based. It's kind of like featuring and showcasing local areas. So number 1 would be like an informational explainer on the new speed cameras on Broad Street. So I went around Broad Street getting like different cool visual angles, and each different angle I'm like delivering another part of my script talking about, hey, here's everything you need to know about the new speed cameras on Broad Street here.
Put it up behind you, just one of these.
Yeah, if you scroll down a little bit, should be right.
I didn't mean to distract you. Sorry, I just wanted to.
I don't know, it's somewhere up there. But anyways, so that way people can get. Oh yeah, right.
Yep.
So basically, just people on Broad Street.
We're interacting live. Go.
So just giving people information, also in like a visual way. As you can see, like I actually was like on Broad. It's not just me talking to my camera like, here's what you need to know. Try to take it an extra level, show the visuals. Another one I did is I went to Dublin, Ireland, and even though all I do is like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania content, there was a Steelers Vikings game, and I brought a bunch of Pennsylvania snacks over there, like Tasty Cake, Hershey, hers, all the above, and had Irish people try them. So then people can see like their local community showcased kind of internationally. And then the third piece I did just quite recently for Halloween, where I did a fake scarecrow prank. I just, thank you. I was just at
pumpkin head on the Rocky statue. Literally,
you can see that. that's the whole setup. And I would just like pretend I was the scarecrow at City Hall. They had like all like this hay fall stuff, so I was like, oh, I'll blend in perfectly. Put a pumpkin on my head, had like the eyes kind of blacked out so like you couldn't see there's a person. Waited like an hour, scared a handful of people throughout the day. So it'll be informational, kind of like interesting, and then also sometimes just silly and dumb. So that's all I do, anything Philly and Pennsylvania.
I'm so glad to understand why it's called No Shorts. I thought it was because you had something against shorts. Anyways, hi, I'm Yoe Shaw. I'm a podcast journalist. I used to make and host the NPR podcast Invisibilia for a long time, and now, but then I got laid off, and the show got canceled, and like a lot of my colleagues, you know, had to scramble and figure it out in this new climate for journalism. And so I started a new show. It's independent. It's called Proxy. You know, we're on the emotions beat. So I can talk about a recent story we did that explains what that means, because everyone scratches their head when I tell them that. So recently, a listener came to us with a niche emotional conundrum.
Niche emotional conundrum.
Those are the kinds of cases we take on. They have to be primarily emotional, not material. And so this listener really wanted to forgive someone that she has held a grudge against for, you know, her entire life, but she doesn't know how. And she's tried lots of things. She's been to therapy, she's, you know, read all the books, and she just, you know, she doesn't know how to disappear resentment. Right? Like it feels like a magic trick. Like, how do you do that? And so I found her, so what we do on the show is listener comes to us with a niche emotional conundrum, and then I scour the world for the perfect stranger for them to talk to, and I facilitate a conversation. And this stranger can be someone who has, you know, they've lived the same thing, and so they have wisdom to share. Either, you know, from their perspective, sometimes like they could be the villain in their story, but it's a stranger, so there's none of the personal drama. Or it could be a researcher who's studied their issue for decades and has insights to share. So in this case, I found the foremost forgiveness researcher in the world. I discovered that there is a whole research field in psychology around forgiveness, where they've really tried to break it down into its component parts and figure out, can you actually study this? And like, what does it lead to in your well-being if you do it, and how do you do it? And so this Proxy, his name is Bob Enright, very sweet guy. He basically has come up with his own forgiveness program that he's studied. You know, it's been found to be effective in over 32 peer-reviewed studies. It's sort of seen as a gold standard for forgiveness interventions. And he's, you know, studied it with all kinds of people who've been hurt, jilted lovers, children who've been bullied, children of emotionally unavailable parents, even incest survivors. And so I facilitate a conversation between the two of them. And so the way the podcast works is like Seg A is like the problem, you know, it's the story of the problem. And then Seg B and C are the proxy conversation. And what I try to do is like produce it, you know, and I prep and produce it and all the stuff. And I try to make it feel like you're in the scene of an encounter. So, you know, all the kind of like awkwardness, the butterflies in the stomach, people getting mad, people disagreeing, you know, just sort of like really trying to squeeze as much drama and humor and joie out of just human connection, raw human connection. And so I feel like that was a good example of like us being on the emotions beat, you know, using my like mainstream NPR serious reporting skills and training them on something as mysterious as emotions, you know, something that I think we really do need to report on more rigorously, because as we know, they're part of every problem we have. They drive behavior, you know, from personal to political to, you know, everything. And I just feel like we don't study them enough. And so I look at the history, sociology, science of emotions, and all of that stuff. And then we also do fun stuff. We're not just a bummer. Recently, I held...
Proxy podcast, not just a bummer.
Not just a bummer. We recently held a cage match, the podcast equivalent of a cage match between two
Hold
extra.
on, podcast equivalent of a cage match or a cage match.
No, sorry. Take out the first cage match. The podcast equivalent of a cage match between two introverts and two extroverts who have beef with the other side in their friendships. And we finally air our grievances and take a historic step in extrovert-introvert relations and tried to work it out. And that was really fun. And we did that with comedian Aparna Nancherla, who's like famously an introvert.
Cheers.
Well, okay, so I had a buzzer. I sent everyone a buzzer, and part of the episode involved us like saying what are our biggest pet peeves about the other side, and then anytime we notice someone doing the thing, like, you know, an extrovert talking over someone, taking up too much space, or like an introvert like not like saying what they actually mean, then, you know, we would hit the buzzer and then we'd have to talk about it. But like, of course, only the extroverts buzzed. we didn't get any buzzes in.
Well, good afternoon, grandbabies. Let's try that one more time. Good afternoon, grandbabies. All right. Well, it's nice to be here with you all today. The name is Bruce Johnson, but you can call me Pop. All right, I have a thing I call it the 3 E's. All right, educate, enlighten, and entertain. All right, so I'm either going whitewater rafting with some liberals and conservatives and finding ways to use whitewater raft to bring us together. You might catch me in my kitchen teaching you about emotional and mental wellness for yourself with self-love and care. Or you might be out here to see me dancing with the guy in Rittenhouse Square, just having a good old time. The whole thing about it is that I'm everyone's papa. So if you come down to, you found it. Oh yeah, that was me jamming the other day. But yeah, my whole thing about it is that with so much going on social media, sometimes you need to stop scrolling and just to hear someone to give you some self-love, make you feel good just for a minute and a half as you keep on moving. And that's what Pop is. I'm everyone's Papa. I'm your Papa, that's why you call me Grand. I call y'all grandbabies. All right? Yeah, that's all about me.
All right, so I'll stay with you for a second.
Oh, all right, we're staying right here.
Because very intentionally, you guys reflect very different corners of information ecosystem. So
Oh, yeah.
Give me, like, how do you identify influencer, creator, journalist, entertainer, whatever? How do each of you, and talk to me a bit about trust for your audience. What does trust speak to each of your audience?
Well, yeah. Well, I want to say real quick, me and Santiago did a collab. We went to a Steelers and Eagles game and talked about the history of the Steagles. That was some fun time. So, you know, with collaboration, especially with me, and trust, because when you think about family, you know, some of us have family we don't trust, but family who you're supposed to always be able to trust, and being a pop figure who talks about love and tells you that I love you, giving you things to make you think about the day. I've had people on my page tell me a lot about them dealing with anxiety and depression, and because of that minute and a half or whatever I'm telling them about, saved their lives. I didn't realize that because that's not what I was going for, but it's the impact of what I was doing. So I didn't realize that I was building a safe space, a safe community for people who felt loved, felt heard, felt appreciated, all because of a grandfather figure. It's what they actually needed. Whether they never knew their grandfather, passed away, knows them, or had a hard relationship with them, we've all been connected with a pop. And so I bring the positive side of what grandparents are supposed to be for our grandbabies. So that's how I build my trust, is being everybody's pop. Yes, sir.
A lot more to say about that. Yeah, absolutely. Please. Wait, give me a version of that. Who are you now? What's your title these days, and what's trust for you?
I have been calling myself recently an emotional investigative journalist, which started out as a bit, but then it stuck, and then now I'm dead serious about it. So I still identify as a journalist primarily, and I think that is what my listeners are coming to me for because of my background, and there is like a lot of not so reported or rigorous or fact-checked stuff out there in the mental health space. So I want to provide, I suppose, a smart reported take on all that. That's like a little bit more heady and also more intimate and emotional. And the way that I think about trust, we're a new show. We started last year, so I'm still figuring it out. What I've realized is that, every show, whatever you're doing, as you start making your thing and you gather listeners, you are, whether you know it or not, you're sort of setting up a promise for your listeners or audience, and they come to expect a thing from you if they like it. And when you stray from it, then you can start to, people will feel betrayed. And so recently, I got 2 emails from listeners. I think complaint emails are super useful and interesting because I think they're a good indicator of when trust has been broken. Not always, of course, there's a lot of whatever emails out there. But yeah, so recently I got an email from a listener. We did an episode on estrangement. So a listener wrote in who'd been cut off by her 2 kids who asked for no contact. And then we paired her with a woman who cut off her 2 parents. And then we facilitated a conversation. It was really intense, obviously, and it was a hard story, and we tried to be as sensitive and careful throughout the entire process. And then we did a part 2 on estrangement where we got 2 estrangement therapists who have experiences from the other side, like a parent who'd been cut off and then reunited, and then a daughter who cut off her parents, did not reunite, to just sort of talk to us about this mystery that we had discovered, which is why is it that so many parents cannot hear what their kids tell them? And their kids keep saying no, I told you. And then the parents are like, no, they never told me. So we approached that with a little bit of a more lighthearted approach. Not we didn't do a game show, there were no buzzers, but it was not as intimate and emotional as the first episode. And so this listener was that felt off. That felt off on such a sensitive, serious topic, and she felt betrayed. And we had a really good conversation about it. Yeah. So I'm still figuring out how to think about the trust and what my listeners are coming to expect from me.
Yeah, the thing you guys are all talking about, there's a promise. So Santiago, say a bit more about what do you call yourself and what does trust look like for you, for your audience?
Trust, it just comes down to consistency and maybe effort, because people have seen, some people maybe started watching my stuff more recently, but I've been posting about Philadelphia or Pennsylvania for over 4 years. So some people may have been around 2-3 years, maybe 1 year, but you keep seeing it, you're like, okay, this guy's obsessed with anything that's local. Okay, got it. And then the second thing is, especially with the informational pieces, I think that's really where a lot of trust gets built, is people see when I'm talking about stuff, I'll have the quote from an article above me. I'll have via, Inquirer, via WHYY, wherever it's coming from, I'll have that listed. So that it's actually getting sourced. You go look up that quote, you'll find where it's from. And that means something to people, because there's so much misinformation on the internet. Even when people are well-intentioned trying to talk about an issue, they'll get up there, they'll yap, and they don't really realize there's either a ton of nuance or something to their story that makes whatever they just told you either completely misleading or just straight up wrong. So I think when people see the amount of effort that goes into even a simple speed cameras on Broad Street story where you're getting the exact sources, over years and years and years of people seeing you and seeing that, they're gonna trust you. And of course, if one day I start just straight up lying, that's gonna break that. But in general, if you put in the effort to show people, hey, I care about getting you this accurately, over time, when you see an issue coming up, you might have already heard about it, but once you see my video, you're like, I want to make sure, what does he say? And that's kind of the advantage you have when you really commit to, being accurate. And that's what I try to do.
How much are all of you guys balancing this approach to the story, I expect to have greater reach, versus this feels truer to what I think it's to do? How much is for all of you guys weighing, reach versus whatever you view as a truer thing?
I mean, I like when things go super viral, but I don't always care that much because everything is local. So I'm always totally fine with something getting 30K views. And if it's niche, there's going to be a certain pocket of the local area that will have loved that I talked about it. So I don't always really care. Certain things go, obviously I want things to be big and I try to tackle the bigger local issues. But at the end of the day, if there's something, there's been videos where it's 50,000 views and I see that 20% of people watch the whole way through. It's wow, that's still 10,000 people that were really locked in on this small thing. So to me, literally not everything can be a home run. You cannot have million view, at least at the scale when it's just local stuff. So to me, it's have the big stuff, you have the little stuff, and that's it. Don't really matter.
Say more another metric for others do the same. Santiago, like you mentioned the full watch being a metric that has become really popular. It wasn't there 10 years ago. Is that a favorite number? What is a number that you like to look for?
I mean, I don't know. For me, it depends on, I guess, how long the video is. But one of the biggest metrics I like looking at is like retention and who watched the whole thing. Because there will be videos you'll see that will have 1 million views or maybe like 100,000 views, and the likes will be very, very low. So this might have been blown up and like not that many people liked it, or the retention's super low. So it's like, sure, a lot of people watched, but like how many people really care? But I don't know, like a speed cameras on Broad Street video, that might be, several 100,000 views, and then you'll see 30% retention. I mean, that literally means like 100,000 people watched the whole thing. That's what I care about. It's like how many people watched the entire video. That's probably how I judge my views. Is not what's the view number, is more how many people actually watch the entire thing. Because at the end of the day, if people are swiping halfway through, it's maybe you got their attention for a bit, but that doesn't really matter. So planning content, it's like you really want to get people all the way through. That's a true view to me.
Yeah, it's great. Please, guys.
I'll keep this short and then I'll pass it off to Pop-Up, because I don't really think about it that much. I just sort of, follow my curiosities and also what our listeners want. I have a Patreon and it's pretty active, and I'm constantly checking in with listeners about like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I try to keep that feedback loop pretty tight. Like we haven't had anything go viral because we don't have an algorithm for audio only podcasts. Like it's all just, you grow your audience, like someone, you have to convert someone into an audience listener, and they have to usually find you from another podcast. I'll say recently we did do an episode that I was really excited about and I thought was beautiful and important, but it did not do as well, and I'm still trying to make sense of what that means for a tiny shop like us. It was a story about these two young women, one a Ukrainian teenager who had to flee home because of the war, and then a young woman from Palestine who had to leave. And I put them into conversation, and they had this like incredible conversation about like, trying to build a new life, and you feel guilty about not being home, and and there was so much poetry for both of them, and I was so excited. And then it has done the worst of all of our episodes, and I imagine it probably has to do with the topic. Like people are just very fatigued from, all of the horrible things happening in the world right now. And maybe it also says something about what people come to my show for, which is maybe an escape, and maybe they don't want to think about politics. I've done a few other political episodes, and those have done better. So I'm still trying to figure it out, but also I don't want to just give our listeners what they, like I also want to, like I have my own mission for the show, and there are stories that I think are important that I think we'll just do no matter what.
Welcome back to that platform. Pop-Up, how good is your instinct on what's going to perform well? When are you surprised?
Granted, I got sick and tired of even caring anymore. I'm seriously. By the time you get to my age, you're just doing it because you want to make sure your message gets across, even if it's just one per individual. I'm fine with that. But you know what? And what got me going was that you've got one algorithm that goes for Instagram and another one for TikTok. Now, the dancing video that Chris just showed you, it only got 3,000 plus maybe views on TikTok, but it got 50,000 views on Instagram. Right? I'm just, so whoever gets it, gets it. I'm for someone who's being a pop-pop, I'm really not there to measure things. I'm just not. Because I've got the followers there, I can see the numbers that I need to see. As long as I'm making an impact to one brand, maybe I will take that. There's some comments that I even see where they're saying, well, Pop-Pop, this one's got more views, more numbers, more likes. Grant, maybe I can care less. As long as you saw it. As long as you saw it, Pop-Pop's fine. Right? So that's just mine. Now, the numbers do matter, and I was really into it in the beginning, but I realized that as long as I get enough thank you Pop-Pops, you made me feel good today, I'm happy. I was sad, but I saw your video, I felt good. That is all Pop-Pop needs. A comment and a half. That's all I need.
Yeah, build on this, Pop-Pop. Let's talk about platforms and sustainability. You are, among these creators that crossed that 1 million follower threshold, which a decade ago that meant you're good. Sustainability is there. We're in a new era where that does not come with secure financial stability. How are you thinking about sustaining the work you do? What's going into your thinking? How the platforms play?
Oh, yeah, this is where Alexander comes in. He'll be here later on. I'm talented. He's a producer and business developer, Devo. He'll be here later on. But the biggest thing with Pop, especially with me, is I like to work with brands, for one. I also do merch, but also I realize that people want to have access to Pop. So I charge them. If you want to talk to Pop, come talk to me. But you get a free merch for Pop for coming to talk to you. So you get a benefit. But for me, I realized that, and Chris, you and Alexander talked a lot about this, how sometimes creators use these platforms as just an advertising space. But there's no actual sustainable business that comes with that. Now, what's really good with the things that I'm able to do is that with the following, I can charge a certain rate, so I have enough brands that I work with on that. But I'm like, well, I need to find multiple revenues I can leverage using Pop. So I have the B2B. I don't know why y'all know what I mean when I say business to business. I also got the B2C. I have to convert some of my followers. If you really want more for Pop, I got to charge y'all. The reason why I have to, if I showed y'all my inbox of how many messages I get for advice, that's a lie for some of my age to go through each and every one of those. So if you really want my time, if you really want it, you'll come holler at me. So that's what my model has been with that. And because I love tea, eventually I'm thinking about getting to tapping some tea, right? But I've been always thinking about my vision too. I love entertainment. So I think about entertainment and media as well. So, I'm already thinking about how I can leverage my platform and my value to turn that into some kind of currency. And if some folks I realize doesn't have the budget, I said, well, get me to the room where the budget's going to be. So, I'm all about how I can compromise and work with my business partners.
I want to talk a lot about what I've talked with Alexander about. Maybe we'll come to that.
All right.
You're in the midst of a membership drive, so I know you think about.
Yes, I think about money all the time now. All the time. Too much. That was at NPR, there's a strict firewall between editorial and advertising. That's the way it is in most mainstream media journal outlets. So I didn't know anything, literally anything about the business of podcasting. I didn't even know what an RSS feed was. I didn't know what a pixel, I didn't know anything. And so I had to learn it all to basically, I made that my new beat. Was okay, I'm on the emotions beat and I'm on the beat of how to make a successful podcast in the year 2025. And so I just treated it as a reporting task, and that helped with anxiety and all that stuff. I just made a lot of calls, I did a lot of research, and I basically figured this is where I've come to, which is for an independent podcast in the year 2025, audio only, I don't know about the video side, I think that we will be sustainable from a mix of a subscription business. We have Patreon, a mix of that plus ads and sometimes grants, but you can't really rely on that. So to me, that's real. I will never just rely on ads because the scale, the numbers just don't make sense. It's science fiction. You have to get to 300,000 monthly downloads per episode in a month to be even to be able to start making any money. And for a new show, because we have the discoverability issue for audio podcasting, it's really, really difficult. And so from the very beginning, I was okay, so I'm just gonna ask our listeners, I'm just gonna be really transparent about what we're doing. That I'm a person, I'm a journalist making this for you. And yes, you have been getting a lot of podcast content for free for so many years, which I think really was stupid of us and short-sighted, because we basically trained our listeners to expect that content for free. And so it's basically we have to, maneuver a culture change, an attitude shift for our listeners to be okay, if I like a podcast, I have to build it into my monthly budget. We've already seen that with written newsletters, right? That's normal for people to pay a monthly subscription for that, but it's less, I think it's more rare for people to do that for an audio podcast. And so the advice I got, and which I give to everyone, is from the very beginning, if you're starting a new thing, like, you need to start a membership business, like, from the beginning and as soon as you can, because to make it clear, like, this doesn't come for free, you know, like, I am working, this is like important. If you care about this, then you should pay for it. And then recently, so basically, I've been on this quest to get to a year 2. I took out a loan originally and used my savings to fund the first year. And so it was a real question, like, are we gonna get to a year 2? And so we recently did a membership drive on Patreon, and we made it. So we are gonna have a year 2. And it was like really, we didn't get the numbers that we needed to be completely self-sustaining, but I got some grants, and with the support of grants, we're gonna be able to do a year 2. And I have a lot of thoughts about how to run a membership campaign. If you want to talk about that, I'll just say quickly that I reported on it. If you're sensing a pattern for me, if there's any time I have a problem, just report on it. So I did an episode. Oh no, Papa, don't. No, you sit back. No, we have to take care of Papa's hips. Thank you, Papa. So I recently did a collaboration with Alex Goldman from Hyperfix. Do you know of Alex Goldman? He's the former co-host of Reply All, super, big podcast. I was a big fan. And so he had the niche emotional conundrum that I had, which was he started a new independent show, and now we find ourselves in the position of having to ask for money all the time, but we hate doing it because it fills us with shame and embarrassment and, lots of feelings. But we have to survive. And so then I found us a proxy, this fundraising expert who taught me a lot of things.
San Diego, you're at a different stage. You want No Shorts to be its own thing? What's your?
When I look at sustainability, I'll continue to do No Shorts forever, honest to God. And the way I look at sustainability is more than just the money of it all, because the biggest thing to me is, how is your content going to last? If I'm getting, 1 million views a week now across platforms, how do we make sure that either is at least staying the same or generally going up? And the biggest thing, this is the reason I think I went so hard into it, right after high school, and I believe so much in No Shorts, is because all I do is local stuff. All I do is Philly, I do PA, and the reality is there's always new stuff happening. There's always new stuff to talk about. There is always new, championship runs on our sports teams. There's new political issues. There's always stuff happening. So in my head, I was like, look, outside of a nuclear attack on this area, I'm gonna have stuff to talk about. And at that point, if we do get nuked, I have a lot bigger problems than just, my TikTok is gonna get ruined, So to me, that was always how I viewed sustainability, because I love sports. If I had to talk about sports every single day, I would get bored. That's just how it would be for me. But it's a huge part of my content. So to me, being able to do so many different things locally and knowing that there would always be new stuff, I had so much confidence in this is something I actually could pursue, and I could have a lot of fun with it, and it could also be a career, because it will continue to give back. There will always be new stuff. In terms of the money side of stuff, one quote I heard on a podcast once that I thought was really important was, there's always a market for the best. So even if times are tough, even if economic times are slower, there's always a market for the best. And I always try to envision myself there, how can I be, one of the most reputable local brands? How can I really stick out? So even when brands are we're pulling back our marketing budget, they're still hey, we still have some campaigns to do. Let's reach out to this guy. Because for me, in terms of I used to have just my email on my Instagram. People could just reach out for collaborations. I would do nearly no outreach for brand deals, and I would still have stuff coming in. Just recently, now I have an actual manager reading through everything. But I don't know. There's very little outreach going on. It's just hey, the most amount of emails I get for collaborations or brands and stuff is after content does good, after a huge video. So I don't really care to do a bunch of outreach, and maybe in the future that will help really boost me up. But at the end, you have to have just great videos all the time. And I think I'm in a niche where it's super sustainable.
probably more to Santiago and Pop-Up to start, how vulnerable do you feel with the platforms? Like, how much do you worry their changes could impact you in unforeseen ways?
I mean, I was incredibly anxious like a year ago-ish when when TikTok might have completely shut down, and I was like, oh Lord, like this is like half of my business. So that was a rough like month for sure, like mentally. But I don't know, like platforms are going to change. For the longest time, Instagram was like the big like young Gen Z, maybe not Gen Z, like it was the young cool new thing, and then like TikTok is really like way bigger, and now Instagram's like quite literally trying to copy them. So I don't know, like platforms are going to change, and I'll adjust that. I'll see, hey, there's this new platform where I can spread local journalism, local fun videos, and all that. So that'll come and go. Like as long as like I think like your core niche is strong, and that's what I think mine is. If there's a new platform, people still will remember who I am. So it might take some time, but like, oh yeah, I remember that guy. Boom, follow, boom, like whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, at one point in time, the platforms will probably die or really like plateau, and it'll adjust. But at the end of the day, people really, have trust in you, they believe in you, like they mess with your stuff, then it's gonna be okay. So I don't stress too hard. It's like it's all gonna happen one day. Change is always happening. Just put out great videos all the time, and it'll be fine.
So maybe pop up to ask you in a slightly different way, because something I talked to Alexander about is a belief I have, and maybe it came out of the spirit of this Unconference in the last 15 years, was like so much of editorial is usually a strategy behind some business, and that could be a membership business, or an advertising business, or a subscription business, or an events business, or whatever. How do you think about and if you want to be, is pop-up a business with a front door on the platforms, or is that front door the business itself, and how vulnerable do you feel to their algorithmic changes?
That is a very interesting question there, Chris. It's kind of interesting with my field because I'm all about spreading love, and I'm about love first before profit. That's exactly what it is, right? But in order to grow scale, there is a lot of that business that you got to have within there. That's why Alexander's here to do that stuff for me. But I had to realize that with the amount of value that you do have in this, what I'm trying to do with myself is talking to my grandson, Alexander's really, I can become my own brand. So we put together a whole identity for myself, So I'm realizing that myself, because of the identity, what I'm going to build with Pop-Up, there's a lot that I can do with Pop-Up, with myself. And because of my growth happened to where it is, I'm now testing out the ropes of the things to see what I really enjoy doing. So whether I'm doing appearances, because I love to host events, I would love to do things. So I do things like that, right? However, I also realize that there's things I can leverage that brings in partners. So, between brands that align with my values, there's that avenue approach. However, I'm also realizing that isn't sustainable. So a lot of things, just like what Santiago was saying about the marketing, those budgets gets cut. that affects a lot of influencers. And I don't want to depend on what the marketers are saying or what the budgets of those marketers are. However, I do know with what I'm doing with myself right now, I have on my Instagram. Who has Instagram? Everybody has Instagram? Have anyone used the channels, the little channels they have on there? I have about 10,000 members in that channel. I call them my grandbaby market researchers. So every product idea they have in mind, I send it to them, get their thoughts. If they like it, I like to see it and pilot and see what they think about that. So a lot of the things that I'm trying out right now is by me listening to my followers or my grandbabies and seeing what sticks. So having this grandbaby market research team I can talk to all the time, I for their feedback. So be honest with me. So at least I know if they like what I'm talking about, if they don't like it, they give me all the information that I need to keep on moving on as far as their business side. So I'm like, I don't want to put out stuff that I don't know they're going to like. So I like to really key in into what my grandbabies want. Supply and demand, that's right.
I have something to say about platforms. So I used to have the NPR platform, right? I used to have the Invisibilia feed, which was a huge audience. huge, one of the biggest podcasts at NPR. So we didn't have to really worry about growth or any of that. And then I lost that platform. And that, so if I were to go back in time, I would have told myself I should have been building my own, relationship with listeners, like way back when I had a regular paycheck. So I should have started a newsletter. Everybody knows this, but I should have started a newsletter. I should have tried building my social media following. I hate social media. Now I have to do it. But I should have been doing that when I had a much bigger platform. And so for a long time with the show, we were just trying to get a feed drop on the Invisibilia feed, which was very difficult because they didn't want to do it. You think they should, it would cost them nothing. They could make money off of us. But it didn't happen for a long time. And then when we finally got it, we did get a bump. We got a big bump, but not anywhere near what I thought it was going to solve all our problems. But by then, it'd been years after the show had been canceled, so a lot of people had unsubscribed from the feed. So anyways, that's just my note, my message to anyone who has a regular, is working at a media outlet. And if you're depending on that platform, I would really, really think about building your own.
If we say on that, so I think this group is so interesting in this event. We made a hard turn in content this year, and I look at this arc that actually Liz, whoever Liz was here, yes, Liz, we talked about this that clicked for me only recently in talking to you that 15 years ago, a bunch of us who were starting this thing, we were that generation's creators, and we had technically, I think got a bunch of things wrong. We I think overcorrected and were so anti-social platforms that we were so focused on direct audience and modeling that we were very tied to what became an early events model. And it was financially sustainable, but then when I chart out, I think it had an audience cost for us. We probably converted a very high percentage of our audience to financially underwrite us, indirectly or directly, but then we lost audience. And now I think that it's swung the other way, where we've been very focused on how to get the largest audience. And I'm I think we got something right 15 years ago on focusing on how do we have a direct relationship with an audience to convert them to putting money in our work, however you do that, indirectly, directly, or whatever. And so I feel that moment is really interesting to me, that we've seen the largest audiences of all time. I have no fucking follow on social. And in a few dorky things, I've had the largest audience I've ever had, talking about VC dollars, very niche shit. But it's been wild to me to see that audience grow, but how little they relate to me being able to employ full-time journalists. And running an organization 20 years later, I now know how do I employ full-time journalists and what has the biggest numbers. And I'm those don't actually relate at all, which has been wild to me. I wonder how much you must be thinking.
Oh yeah, I have very limited. It's I'm the only person making the show, and my husband, who I call the bedraggled podcast spouse, he's a music producer, so I make him mix the show for free, and I have an editor who I pay for 4 hours a week, and that's it. I'm doing everything: newsletter, social media, producing, reporting, research, all of it. So I have very little time. And so, when I get advice from people, they're always you need to be on video. You need to be making a video version of your podcast. You need to be doing socials. You should, and I have tried, and I just don't it's just hard for me, being an audio podcaster, and maybe I could probably get better at it. But from my research, at least in podcasting, there's very little conversion from socials, press, really, you will not convert a social media follower into a listener, most likely. It's for brand awareness and, and discoverability. But even then, if they discover your podcast and they watch your videos, are they going to listen to your podcast, which is how we make money through advertising and through the Patreon memberships. So I've had to be really, and I get seduced all the time by video. I'm oh, this is the week I'm going to do video. And I just had to be real with myself about what are the priorities and being very clear-eyed. So for me right now, number one priority is listenership. because I know that there's like so many former Invisibilia fans and NPR fans, and so like there's a lot of people who would probably be into my podcast, but they just knew about it. And so I have to figure out how to do that, and that is really just through guesting on other shows and doing collabs. So I don't even really care about social media at this point.
And different model. I think the point is that you guys are operating different models. I know I'm going to lose folks in a sec. Other takes on that before we go out with a couple final follow-up reviews. Give us, send us something that you're optimistic about. You guys all inform communities in different ways, and you do it for different reasons. What are you excited about coming into many treacherous waters? But what are you optimistic about?
Yes.
Man, good grief. Oh boy.
Sounds what we do every year.
To help us be optimistic, Papa.
I know, right? That's all the pressure. It's kind of like when you have to say the prayer during Thanksgiving, do the grace and stuff. Come get to work together. As I watch, and a lot of people I see, there's a lot of media journalists in the room, you all see a lot. Y'all have to produce a lot of stories. Ooh, and a lot of my grandbabies see what you all talk about and write about. And guess who had to come to get a little encouragement? They got to come to my page. So what I'm realizing, information is important. Our information is important. However, it is important that we create these safe spaces where we can give hope with one another. And not until I go on my page that I realize not only am I encouraging my grandbabies, but the other grandbabies are encouraging the other grandbabies. That's what it's all about. It doesn't matter what your political view is, your economic background, what your race is. I mean, I have everywhere from white women all the way to trans people in my comments talking because they appreciate what we do for one another. That is the blueprint of what our society should be all about. It's not about the background, what we believe in. Yes, we have these differences. Yes, there are troubles. But one thing I always believed is that we can always do everything if we work together. It takes us working together. There are so many puzzle pieces here. If we really want to make change, we have to put our egos aside, we have to put our beliefs aside, and understand that we are still humans at the end of the day. We all ate lunch. Why? Because we were all hungry. It had nothing to do with the gender, your race, how much money you got. It's about being human. And we have to get back to the basis of just human connections again. So that's what I try to provide in my space. A space for my grandbabies, no matter what's going on. You know that we have a supporting system of each other right at Pop's pages. And I would like to see what it looks like for us to take things off of social media and bring it into reality. In spaces like this, where we can have our disagreements, but we can still love one another, have compassion and understanding for one another. That's what we need right now. Sorry, let me stop, because I'm about to go on a whole rant here, but that's what I just believe.
I got a quick, I guess it's probably the last thing we'll say, but I'm definitely optimistic that everybody in this room will continue to keep showcasing the local area, or maybe if some of you guys don't do well, but just keep spreading good information. And I think a big thing that happens with social is people are this is the next generation, this is the next whatever. We don't need the traditional journalism, and I think that's one of the most insane takes ever. Because when I do any informational video, it is combining 5 sources of hard-working journalism. So anytime people are this is old news, whatever, it's no, that's the hard reporting that happens that social media needs to thrive. So I also want to in all this social media stuff, remember the hardcore journalism is what drives all this stuff and is super important. So thanks to y'all, because I love using y'all as sources, combining y'all, and then putting a 1-minute explainer to try to make that easy and fun for people. So I'm optimistic we can keep spreading great information and then showcasing Philly area a great way.
Okay, one last thing that I'm optimistic about. I agree with both of you, absolutely. So I imagine everyone here is a journalist, creator, you're making your own content, you have an audience. And I just want to echo what Pop said about we do have the power to model and create these spaces for our audiences. And that's something I've been thinking about with my own show. What are the aesthetics of my show? What kind of jokes do we make? Do we dunk on people? That's really popular. People love listening to podcasts where the hosts dunk on people and are like, they're so stupid, And I cannot stand that stuff personally. And, I've decided that I basically want to build a show where it is a safe, loving, non-judgmental space for human connection. And I feel like we all have the power to do that. And then the other thing is you can use your reporting skills to figure this shit out. That was the main, I was so scared. And then once I was oh wait, I know how to find things out. And then I just, treated it like a reporting task. Yeah, we can figure this out. I absolutely believe that reporters, creators, we have the skills. We're best positioned to figure out how to keep doing the thing we love.
That's great. You're running thank you.
The turn is where the old school magician takes the cage with the dove and the handkerchief, smashes it down. And the audience is like, what the hell just happened? Everything that you thought you knew about the bird, the cage, and the handkerchief is now completely gone. So if Kelsey's doing this, she's going to get the audience leaning into, we can't trust government. I mean, for God's sake, Kelsey could take out USA Today and just start reading stuff down there and for you to believe we can't trust government. During her turn, she would say, my argument is creativity will save government. Two things that seem divergent, but that's what she's teaching. Now, we have our pledge, we have our turn. Michael Caine makes the point that no magic trick ever ends that way. You always have to bring it back. Reaches his pocket, pulls out a dove. Now, of course, in 1890, they have no TiVo, they have no Netflix, so they're like, that's incredible. Now, they're not thinking about the fully crushed bird that's inside the other thing. They're just like, that looks exactly like the same bird. So all TEDx talks have to have a prestige. That's called the prestige. And the prestige is a call to action at the end of the talk for a particular target audience. So perhaps Kelsey's prestige is, I'm having a call to action for all government entities to teach creativity. That's a full TEDx talk. Now, what did Kelsey do there? Kelsey not only had a story, but she had an idea that with all the crazy stuff going on in government, teaching creativity does these things. That is an idea. Now, she won't stop there. Why is that an idea we're spreading? Well, government, it's a little wacky right now. People might not trust it, might not be operating effectively. I mean, poor me. I'm supposed to fly out tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, to go see my Eagles play Green Bay. It's going to be 20 degrees in Green Bay. I should just be worried about getting my little mittens, my little booties, instead of worried, is my plane going to show up? And if my plane shows up, I'm worried, are the engines going to stay on the plane?
Is she going to stay in the
I
air?
did get second Marquette, Michigan for 4 days recently. So
That's not helpful, Kelsey. Thank you. Thank you.
That was before the shutdown.
Oh my God, we're going to move these in the back. You can't see. So, in essence, she has a story. The idea is that if we add creativity to training government, things will get better for a number of reasons. It's worth spreading why. More and more people do not trust the government. And how does it change everything? Well, this is where Kelsey will use her creativity to figure out all those folks who engage in some sort of training about creativity. Here are the different things that they glean from that training. Therefore, if they who work for the government are 5% more effective, here's how our world changes. That's a full TEDx talk now. So now anyone who wants to write TEDx talk, told you how to do it. Now anyone who wants to know how to take their story, told you how to do it. So let's talk about my homeboy Aristotle here. Aristotle, even back when he was alive, did research on persuasion and influence. And he basically characterized 3 different things that create influence, and he would share this with all the Roman senators. And he basically said that influence is based on 3 major things. First of all, your ethos. I like to call your ethos your resume. All the stuff that you put on your resume and on LinkedIn is kind of your ethos. Hi, I'm Dan. I have a PhD from the venerable Temple University. I'm a dad, 6 kids. I'm a pet owner, 3 dogs. Only have 1 wife because this is in Utah. And so, this is all of the part of it. Right? And so, that's my ethos. Logos represents statistics, databases, facts, figures, things of that nature. So with ethos, I want you to believe what I'm saying because I throw this PhD at you, which is really the only reason why I put Dr. Dan Young on here, to make a point. Really the only person who ever calls me doctor in conversation is my mom, and that's more for her than it is for me. She just wants to remind people in North Wilmington, Delaware, my son's going through things, and your son works fulfillment at Amazon. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to try to influence you with my ethos sometimes, and then maybe I'll influence you with my logo. So if I take a fine B2B publication, maybe there's some facts and figures there where I'm saying, well, you can believe me because I'm a doctor, or you can believe me because 5 out of 10 people said this according to this publication. And then there's pathos. Pathos stands for emotional connectivity. So while I might influence you with my PhD, and while I might influence you because I quote the Journal of Marketing and the Wall Street Journal, I'm also going to try to get into your psyche and connect with you in order to be able to convince you of something. Now, there's a study done by a guy named Carmine Gallo. They might have read his book. There's 2 major seminal books on TED Talking, Talk Like TED and TED Talks, 2 different authors. Carmine Gallo did a study of the 100 most watched TED Talks of all time. And what he found was, and looking at those talks, he broke down the talks per minute about what percentage of them were ethos, what percentage of them were logos, and what percentage of them were pathos. What percentage of the speakers were like, hey, I'm Dan, super smart, believe me. What percentage were like, I'm super smart, however, believe the Wall Street Journal. And what percentage basically said that, hey, imagine that you're a government worker and you're sitting there toiling in Detroit. I mean, and not like 1950 Detroit. I'm talking about like 8 Mile Detroit. Burning down houses for fun Detroit. Imagine how creativity could affect you. Which of these 3 do you think had the greatest influence on influence in those TEDx talks?
Pathos.
Pathos.
Yeah.
You think so? By how much do you think? So if a talk is 10 minutes long, about how many of those minutes in the most watched and most influential TEDx talks of all time, how many minutes was it emotional connectivity? 5 minutes? You guys?
7 minutes.
7 minutes? Okay. Anything else?
I go 8.
8 minutes?
Higher.
6.5 minutes.
There we go.
Now here's the thing, because I like the 7 minutes, I think 8 minutes, but think practically about speakers you've seen. How much pathos do they usually use?
That's right, like 1 minute.
Maybe one minute.
The intro.
maybe the intro, but even I, in my intro, was like, hey, I'm Dan. I'm trying to build influence with you. Yada, yada, yada. So the most effective speaking of all time, 65% emotional connectivity. So when Kelsey does her talk, she can say, hey, I'm Kelsey. I'm from Detroit. I'm tatted. I'm a badass. Like, she could go through that. But more of what she's going to do is she's going to say something along the lines of, what are your reflections of Detroit? Cars, machinery, a ridiculously big airport that you cannot get to another plane in like 30 minutes.
Music.
Music, of course, Motown.
Yep.
But what if I told you, how would you feel if Detroit was the government capital of the world?
What?
Shh. I'm trying to influence you.
Sometimes it feels like it.
And if I have a job where I'm working 60 hours a week on a line, How much do you think that'd be, how much more happy would I be if you gave me an opportunity to be more creative? Hi, I'm Kelsey. Here's what I do. And let me tell you about why that's a TEDx talk in 2025. So whenever we're talking about journalism, so much of it is focused here on logos, right? But does that influence anymore? In a world where people are listening to fabulous podcasts, right? And are listening to social media, does logos work anymore? Hey, we surveyed 10,000 people. This is the percentage that said it, so therefore it's right. However, are you more likely to be swayed by that? Or are you more likely to be swayed by someone in your demographic that says, here's how it is? Yes, Andy.
No, I'm sorry. I was just, yeah, I was
Although I'm
doing a
just
visual
saying,
thing.
the proxy podcast, I'd say is what, 85-90% pathos?
It's a lot of pathos.
And that's
Some
why
say too much.
Are you telling me that it's pathetic?
Oh boy. Not everyone went to Harvard, so now everyone's got, it'll take you also a little bit of time to get that. Just take the first 4 letters and then spell it. So there you go. So think about that as you're building brand for yourself. Take a note from the podcast. These are the things that are now influencing thought leaders. Those talks and that outreach that has the pathos there. And building upon Sean Blanda, last time, this kind of shows, this is his chart. I forgot his name, so I couldn't accurately quote him. I know it's a Roman journalist. Please do not start throwing tomatoes at me. This is kind of how TED has evolved over time, because what happened before, from 1984 to 2010, a majority of the talks were like original reporting and talking about how cool I am. Much lesser was someone who was saying that, hey, I'm just kind of coming up with this, and here's who I am. And then now it's all about the audience, making sure the audience is taken into account, but the reporting tends to not be original. It tends to be a reproduction of a reproduction of a reproduction of a reproduction, which is part of the reason why TED changed their guidelines or changed their slogan from ideas worth sharing to ideas change everything. They are trying to move much more to original reporting that's about the audience. This is the sweet spot now. So if you're doing TEDx speaking, you should think about good old Sean Blanda's thing. And really focus your efforts on something original that's really audience focused. Once again, in 2025, 2026, you do not need 5 million views. You need 50,000 views of the right person. And we could probably say the same thing, and this kind of talked a little bit in the plenary session, where if you notice, every single person who spoke, they're like, and Chris was like, yeah, views, and everyone's like, dude, I just want to have good content. The views will come if I have good content and I have a target market. And I think a lot of speakers don't think about that. So always focus that. And Kelsey will remember that when we dare do TEDx World.
What date is that?
TEDx Wilmington's April 25th. So the final thing I want to talk about is the law of impact. So this is kind of a basic entrepreneurial law, maybe not basic, maybe major in entrepreneurship, so bear with me. Most people, when I ask them why they want a TEDx talk, or they want to do a TEDx talk, number one answer is, it's on the bucket list. Number two answer is, so-and-so told me that my idea was good. Number three answer is, I want to make an impact. So let's throw out the first two, because we know the story doesn't matter, the idea does. If it's on your bucket list, congratulations, you're probably not speaking at TEDx Wilmington. And the last one is about making an impact. So whenever I talk to someone about, hey, here's why you want to do a TEDx talk, it deals with this. Now, I might be a little bit in the minority of organizers. I don't believe you should do TEDx to monetize, but I also believe that it's hard to have impact unless you monetize. So when you have a TEDx talk, it creates an asset that stays online forever. that you can then use to justify your claim of being an expert.
Hello.
Hello.
I'm Heidi Grisbella, and I am here because for 25 plus years, I have been a part of major journalism institutions covering campaigns, Congress, the White House. My most recent job was investigating the Supreme Court after the leak of the Dobbs decision. And I'm here because a few days after the 2024 election, I quit my job. I held up my phone and I taped an Instagram saying that I believe that we need a new institution to support this rising creator economy and the core of individuals who want to get good information out, but that there is no collective way for us to support each other. And I began with a blank slate. I really didn't know, what is this gonna look like? We built this new institution, but I treated it like I would any other investigative project. And that means consulting experts in journalism, behavioral science, social media, film production crew for a while. And I'm not here because this is a new hustle. I'm here because I'm doing this for deeply personal and professional reasons, right? I felt like in my last job as a full-time journalist, I investigated this network that extended to also a massive media ecosystem that has really been erected over the past 20 to 30 years. And it runs in direct parallel with kind of our loss of faith in our institutions and democracy and journalists. And I'm at a point in my career where I want to try and do something about it. So I'm here to share with you just a sketch of what I'm doing, and then I want to talk to you all about how we can work together and how I can support you, whether you are a newsroom or whether you are a creator that wants to work with a newsroom. There's a lane for all of us, and we just need to work together to figure out what this new ecosystem looks like, because right now, what I see is a lot of really talented, hardworking people who want to make a difference, but they're hoofing it alone. And I was shocked when I've gone to some of these other gatherings of listening to folks who are just exhausted from the creation side of it, the business side of it, and there's no like collective way to support them. There's no pooled resources, right? So what does that look like? Get Real right now is piloting in the state of Pennsylvania. Let me just start by asking, are you in this room, if you had to loosely define yourself, are you a legacy journalist or are you part of the new creator economy, just so I know who I'm talking to?
Legacy journalist.
Legacy.
Creator.
Okay, great. So my supposition when I started this was that as a journalist, I could create all the great content in the world. And I felt like it was increasingly meaningless because it wasn't getting to the people who needed to see it. I was getting a lot of affirmation in my own media silo, right? Because I knew the people who are watching me on MSNBC or reading my work online, like, yay, you know, you really did it with that story. But are the people who need to read that story actually getting it? Like, it created a bubble around us, such that in the mainstream media, we believed that we were making a difference by getting this information out. And I realized increasingly, as much as my heart is in content creation, meaning like digital investigations, etc., that the real innovation needed to take place on the delivery side. In other words, how can we work together to get through these information silos? And I think there's so many good minds in this room who are working on this, different pieces of this.
Out by different organizations, including Ground Truth, Home Report for America, technically is a Report for America newsroom, figuring out, helping them, how do you work with Gen Z audiences. They have over 200, I believe, newsrooms across the country, and here I am today. So I still have my, as I've said many times in the panels you've seen before, I'm a creator journalist. I do this work on one side, and I also help news organizations figure out how the heck do you maybe take up, how do you guys engage with Gen Z audiences? So kind of Gen Z head. So that's a little bit about me. And so I'm going to pose this question, because I know we get this a lot. There's two questions here, because I know we have some Gen Zers in the room. Again, Gen Alpha, Gen Z, young people in general, I want to say, because we're just broaden the horizon. Anybody have a story of how a young person in your life, you know, your little brother or your daughter or whatever it is, gets their news? Or if you're a young person, again, how do you get their news? I might call on you, because I'm that type of professor.
What do you consider a young person?
I'm in the age of 30, let's go with that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. Let's just go with that.
After 30, it's over.
But
Wow.
we have limited.
So I'll say Instagram Reels.
Who gets that? Who do you know who gets that?
All my kids.
All your kids, okay. How old are they going next?
19, 18, 18, 17, 14, 12.
What about TikTok?
It's less about news, I would say. So TikTok is where they do things that annoy me. Instagram Reels are where they usually get actually something that they would consider news.
So I teach journalism, and a lot of my students are like 20 to, I don't know. How old is the college student? 20, 23?
Yeah, 22.
And a lot of them tell me that they don't think they're actively seeking news, but they will go on TikTok and Instagram. If news is served to them, they will engage with it, but they're not like typing in like nytimes.com or going to the New York Times Instagram account to find that news.
Yeah, that's actually what I learned a study recently from Erica, Klein News Innovation Camp, where it was like, people who get the news, obviously we know people get the news on social media, but people who want in-depth stuff still get it from news outlets. They're going to still search for that. Obviously AI is coming back after that. Sorry. Anybody else? Sorry, go ahead.
My daughter watches John Oliver.
Of course, who doesn't?
And I'm not sure where she gets them from, but there's these people who comment endlessly in videos. They're like 20, 40, 50 minutes long. And they excerpt and then they critique, and she watches these things endlessly. They're intolerable, but
yeah, that's
but
crazy.
that is a major.
Are you talking about John Oliver, or are you critiquing John Oliver?
No, I'm separating John Oliver, who I consider respectable.
Yeah. There's an entire news
from these videos.
Yeah.
That I'm not sure if they're Instagram. I'm not sure if she's subscribing to a YouTube channel. I'm not quite sure how she gets them. Now she's off at college, so I can't ask her.
That's fair. I would say a lot of that is also, I think the people are getting into YouTube, and a lot of that is in YouTube. Yeah. Anybody else with any other examples or questions, or anybody else with any examples?
Well, I'll just double click on the YouTube thing. My son is 15, and that's his primary news source, and it is what comes up in his algorithm primarily. But like when he wants to know about something, like, yeah, he doesn't go to NewYorkTimes.com. He will search for videos on it on YouTube, and then experience multiple different versions of different people talking about the same thing, and then kind of figure out how he feels about it.
That's interesting. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I want to make this, so we all know this one. I want to start out with saying we've had so many panels, and we know this one really important thing. Gen Zers, young people, I believe the new Reuters report is defined as 18 to 34, are getting the news on social media. Like, we know that, like, that exists. We've all kind of acknowledged that. So I don't want to delve too much into that, but more of how do you engage with them. So I made the slide today, by the way, so if anybody's like, if there's any spelling mistakes, I do apologize. But I want to make this as interactive and learn from you guys and as possible, because we have, you know, some brilliant audience engagement and creative journalist experts as well in the room. So I have developed 4 ways to engage with Gen Z people, and again, please feedback, debate. I may say some controversial things, whatever it is, using Gen Z slang. The 4 lessons. Okay, we're gonna start with the first. Well, the first one we know: the perception of journalism is cooked. We're cooked. I think there's aspects of that which is that. And the reason why I say, we can kind of know, we say the trust in local news is declining. That's the first one I want to talk about, where we have, I'll have to call you out on Sarah, is that okay if I call you out? But Sarah, obviously, I know you're Gen Z, we talked before this. I'm so sorry, but like, why? I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm that kind of professor, right? So this is how I teach, exactly. But like, again, you're a journalist, right? And so people are at a time, and I just want to share this real quickly, which is what Liz Kelly Nelson also presented as well. This is how Gen Alpha and teens are. They're saying you're biased, you're crazy, you're fake, you're whatever it is, journalism in general. And so why, and from your perspective as a journalist, why do you, any ideas as to why, or anybody can contribute, but I think from a Gen Z journalist.
Why do people,
Why-
young people feel like that?
Yeah, why do you
is
think
what
so?
you're asking?
Yeah.
I feel like because they hear it from, like, that's like the mass message. I feel like that's what adults in their lives are saying.
Yeah.
Like, I have a younger brother, I have younger cousins, I none of them read the news. And then I try. But I feel like people around them are like, why bother? So,
We're cooked, see, we're cooked.
and so I feel like it comes from like the people around them, where they're like, I don't necessarily feel like I need to trust these sources, and they're already on social media, so it's already there.
They're already coming. Anybody else as to the reason why this is kind of, we know this, right? But what else is the reason why this is happening? Because I think, at least from my experience as a journalist of a lot of traditional newsrooms, and I've worked with them, they don't hear it often, they don't understand it. So go ahead.
Well, so, one of the other things we're seeing today is like, what is journalism? What is news? So when I say, okay, teens view news media negatively, how are they defining news media?
That's fair.
I think, sorry.
No, keep going, this is a conversation.
I think that perception of mass media or like national media is pretty bad, but what I've experienced as like more of a local journalist, the perception is better because people feel like you're embedded in your community. For example, I just finished working at a national outlet that has state-based organization, so it's like one big company, but there's a state-based outlet that's within a community in every state. And so depending on who I was gonna be talking to, I would sometimes present myself as being with the larger organization for like legitimacy purposes, but if I was like talking to someone that I thought was gonna perceive me like negatively for being with like national media, I would be like, I'm with the Montana Register, if I was talking to someone there, because that was the local version of, and where the story was probably gonna end up running. Cause I think it's easier to like lump, I think a lot of this is like if someone's like, who's a journalist, they're gonna name it someone on CNN or Fox News, or they're not really realizing that Sarah, who covers the local tech community in Philadelphia, is like what they're just describing.
Exactly, and that's a big problem that's happening, and like a lot of my followers I'll go to conferences and they'll be like, oh, was this news influencer there? And I was like, wait, no, this is journalism, why would they kind of be there? So, but they're not gonna recognize Sarah, or they're gonna recognize the news.
Yeah, I was gonna add that I think the perception of, capital J journalism is.
I've heard that so many times.
I think that journalism is still alive and well. If you think about, well, not the journalism industry, I should say, but journalism as an act. So if you think about Darnella Frazier, who recorded the video of the murder of George Floyd in Minneapolis, at the time she didn't know what she just recorded, but that was an act of journalism, and it sort of sparked this movement across the country, and she won a Pulitzer Prize for that, which acknowledging it and cementing it as an act of journalism, but that's how people interact with the world now, is through lives, through reels, through TikToks, and so I think it's just changed, and people are just defining an old word with old mediums, even though it's changed.
I think, and I don't think this is unique to young people, that people have a lot of trouble recognizing the world in what they see in the news media. So they hear in the news media that the economy is booming, and then they see the precariousness in their own lives. They hear about, politics in ways that are completely divorced from what's going on in their communities. They don't see the things that they're really concerned about being talked about so much. And so I think we have this, as media have gotten thinner and have, as a result, focused more and more on official sources, which are, I believe, more and more divorced from the concerns of actual citizens, there's just this huge disconnect. And I think that's part of why the social media things are what is connecting, is because those are people talking about things that are really happening.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just gonna say, I mean, I think some of this is also just reflective of the news right now. I mean, the news is crazy right now. And scary, and depressing, and sad, and political. Like, I think some of it is really just a reflection of reality right now. I mean, I hate to say we live in unprecedented times, because every time it's unprecedented, but
It's also
like,
historic time.
yeah, like we're living in wild times. So I think I'm not surprised to see this, because I think news is on an all-time high in all age brackets, you know? So news is scary right now.
No, exactly, and that's a really good input. The other thing is that, I'll say two things and I'll move on from this. One is the fact that the information systems, right? Maria Ressa, your Nobel laureate journalist, she talks a lot. I spoke to her about news influencers at the Teenage Media Summit. She's not, just this aspect of it, she's not a big fan of it. And a part of it is because the corruption of the algorithm with quote-unquote fear, anger, and hate, right? Those kind of perpetuates this aspect of that, and we're kind of seeing that in some of these as well, when all the news is negative, all the news is partisan, and all of this is kind of some of the reflection of it, especially from young people who are still growing up in the world, still learning from it. They're not learning news literacy. In addition to that, though, I think our responsibility, this is from my Gen Z perspective, a lot of the times when I hear these conversations, and when this report came out, and I'm trying to become a LinkedIn influencer, so I don't think a lot more now, but I've heard a lot of people say, oh, this is exactly what we need. News media, kind of blaming young people. Oh, these young kids, they need to learn and get news. How can you say that journalists make stuff up? But a part of that is also the fact that because we're not meeting audiences where, I said this earlier, we're not meeting audiences where they are, they don't know what a journalist is and does, right? I'll give the best example I can give you is the fact that when you go to a Trump rally, when you go to a Obama rally, whatever it is, they, for some reason, people think that you're supporting them when you're covering them. That idea of just covering it, that doesn't comprehend in their heads. One of the things I did for ONA, actually, fun fact, I did on the News Association, I did a get ready with me. They were like, they had no idea what was kind of going on, you know. It was like, wait, what is ONA? What is this? So even for Temple, I already filmed some videos. Like, I'm gonna do this because it's like it kind of brings them into this. I interview different thought leaders as well. It doesn't get that many views, but for my audience, at least it allows them to see this as who a journalist kind of is. So this is a really good. I think this is a really good start. Perception of journalism is cooked. We know that. Thank you for your comments. I appreciate that. The second one is, and John, I think you can be a little bit help with this. Maybe we disagree. Video, not that deep. Now, what do I mean by that? Because I think this is the idea that, from the perspective of a lot of Gen Zers, they are getting their news. There's so much information. There's so much stuff online, and it means that the highest quality kind of produced video, this one that looks so well polished, is not going to do as well as you just walking or you talking about the news and cooking, right? Lisa Rumlar, the TV News, where she holds her spatula up, right? Under the desk news, she's literally under a desk, right? So it is a part of that. Obviously, it doesn't mean you sacrifice things like maybe mic quality, lighting. I think those are all basic things. But it does show this idea that this is a HubSpot latest social media trends report. 65% of marketers, obviously YouTube, we talk about YouTube, but then 76% say authentic low production videos outperform polished content. Quote Ryan Kellett, don't make a video that looks like an ad. Ryan Kellett is a colleague of Project Season and dear mentor as well. So that's something I've been grappling a lot with, and I've worked with newsrooms who are like, no, we're not. What do you mean make it low quality? And it's like, I'm telling some of these industry leaders, like, if you make, and I show them with their own data, if you make a video that is you, like I said, you walking or you talking like how you're, rather than talking to a broadcast journalist, and it's hard, and I've heard some traditional journalists, but talking like you're talking to your son about this exact topic, breaking it down, or like I said, walking your dog while talking about the news. So my question for you guys is, what is the video content that you're consuming? Do you agree, disagree with this? Again, there's aspects, for example, New York Times, Washington Post. I mean, these are amazing, high-quality videos, but a lot of these creative journalists, they have full-time jobs. I mean, I do 50 things, and it's like sometimes I'm not able to do it. But I never diminish the quality of the reporting. I'm getting my experts, I'm citing my sources. Maybe I'm walking my dog while talking about the SNAP benefits as she is, doing her thing. So I don't know, what are your thoughts about video these days?
Yeah, so I completely agree with this, actually. A couple of things, like, one is people who are looking at making video for these platforms need to look at the norms of the platforms and like what kind of videos actually do well with the audiences that are consuming content there. and not try to take something that works for cable news or broadcast news and try to shoehorn it onto these platforms where people are used to ingesting content and engaging with content that is very different, right? So it's like, I think for news organizations in particular, it's really important to invest in understanding these platforms and like the kinds of content that audiences engage with, and learn how to do that. It doesn't mean that you're sacrificing the quality of your journalism, just that you're producing it in a different way that feels like more approachable, right? Because that's often what these audiences are looking for. There was a Ben Reinigo, when he was still at Snapchat, did this experiment where they took Peter Hamby, who they had hired to do a news show on Snapchat that was highly produced. They bought a studio, like it was really slick, and it was like the traffic for it was in the dumper. Like they just couldn't get anybody to engage with it. So they took Peter Hamby out of that studio, like put him in front of a green screen, or other times in his kitchen. Same topics, same like content, but just him talking about it in a casual way, and it like absolutely skyrocketed. So.
And I was going to say, so one of the things that I was speaking about today is I'm a TEDx organizer, is TEDx journalism or not. And one of the things that we see year over year is more and more TEDx speakers are really hounding us as an organizer about the lighting and what this looks like. But at the end of the day, it's always authenticity. It never has anything to do with the lighting. It has to do with just basic stuff. And if you think about the most watched TEDx talks of all time, whether it's Sir Ken Robinson or Simon Sinek or Brene Brown, those were not beautifully produced at all. It was just simply the authenticity of the message and the connection with the audience.
Well, is it part of it? Some of us were raised at a time where if you were on a screen, I mean, that took, a news crew had to show up in front of you and get you, and you're on, these days, I'm sure a Gen Z, it's like, oh, hey,
That's
look
it.
at me,
We're here.
I'm
We're
on
live.
screen.
We're live right now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not so much the, we're gonna worry about professional quality video, making sure that the hair and makeup is done right. I always make sure it's done right.
Perfect.
But it's just, that's not, who cares?
But did audiences ever care? Years ago, I was hearing all this stuff about this idiot Rush Limbaugh, and so I listened to his show a couple of times when I was on long drives. That was a horribly produced show. There was dead air, the mics on people, it was dreadful production. And yet, at least among his audience, I found it unlistenable, but among his audience, they
I would say Rush Limbaugh is actually one of the early creator journalists with the rise of AM radio, and that was a coordinated effort, right, by the conservative movement to take over those airwaves and reach the people in a folksy kind of conversational way.
And I was gonna say, I think that was kind of one of those initial parts there where brand over quality started to happen. I think some of us are at least more my parents' age than mine, where news was Walter Cronkite.
Yeah.
And then for me growing up, news was Dan Rather, Peter Jennings, and who am I forgetting? It's Tom Brokaw.
Yeah.
And so then the content, that was the trusted source, but then as other people felt as though no one was representing their views, then their brand would be greater than the production. And so now we're seeing individual brands of individual people being a far greater impact in the production that they actually put on.
No, exactly. And it underscores this idea that, so two things, and we'll move on to some other comments. But it underscores the idea that with Gen Zers, it is, and this is my tips, anybody wants any tips, it is the fact that take it like it's a FaceTime video. Take it like you're talking to a friend, a colleague. And the struggle, and I work with newsrooms, Adrian, you work with newsrooms as well, the struggle is with traditional newsrooms who work, GBH, NPR, like, no, if you cut this off, right, it has to be like this, well, like this, and I think we live in different times, but also because this, now, as you were used to, this, but now this audience is now used to this. And so, but do you think, does this diminish the quality of journalism? Does that, if I'm still, like I said, again, I point to some of my stuff, it is not the highest quality stuff. I made a TikTok with my Halloween costume on, but I still tell the news right, and but what is, does it diminish the quality of journalism, or is it just the way we live now?
Well, my first job out of college was as a breaking news reporter, and I think a lot about like being on the side of the road and like either calling in my editor and telling him something or like live tweeting, and that was not polished, but it wasn't. It doesn't diminish the accuracy, or I think that's kind of, I don't know. I don't know why people were okay with that, but they're not okay with a more relaxed TikTok.
I like we're all in agreement with this, but I think again, I work with the newsrooms and they're just like, no, like we're just not gonna.
But that's the classic like shoe leather journalism. You're on the scene, you're calling something in, you're writing in a notebook and someone's running to the newsroom to grab, like that's not polished and that's legitimate and it always was.
I mean, I guess it's more of a sort of question, comment too, but do we also think the expectations are different for newsrooms, which is why they feel that way? Because if you were walking down the street, I'm not expecting you to produce something.
Maybe you are.
But like, if I saw the New York Times post something janky, I'd be like, that's a little janky.
There's a difference between, I think there's the janky and non-janky part, that's for sure. But then there's also the production based on what is going on in TikTok. Like again, like I was speaking with Angela Davis and she talked about TikTok and all that, and she was like, yeah, as long as I don't have a problem with social media. She said, it's like as long as it, hey, take my same clips and just make it vertical and we're all fine. I was like, that's not the same thing. That is not the same thing as you want to engage with people, you want to talk to people. You really want to try to make it so that they are engaged, but it also kind of builds trust, because when you're inviting people into your home,